United States looks just like ancient Rome did in its final days. Of course, Rome didn't fall in a day, but when it finally received its death blow in 476 AD, its world power status had declined due to several corrosive reasons. Germanic tribes had beaten Roman forces into submission as Rome had overextended its military and its defense budget. Government corruption had reached epic proportions, and slave labor dried up, forcing the complacent, unskilled Romans to fend for themselves. Sound familiar?
Not many of us say to our sons and daughters, I'm hoping the day will come when you decide to go and pick fruit for a living. Hardly ever hear that.
One of the most often made arguments with regard to immigration is that they only do jobs that Americans don't want. But in a recent analysis, we actually looked at all 474 occupations as defined by the Department of Commerce and found that there were only 6 that were majority immigrant, and those jobs only account for about 1% of the U.S. workforce.
But the final knife in Rome's back was that it lost its identity. Most importantly, Rome allowed the barbarian hordes to settle within its borders, which eventually led to an uprising, putting an end to the identity of a 1,000-year-old world power civilization. Fast forward to 2021, and the United Nations has already decided for every citizen in the United States that over the next 50 years, you will need to be replaced by a foreign population.
As you know, the Secretary General has been concerned about this for a long time, and I'm very pleased that he's launched this program against xenophobia. If all of the migrants, recently arrived migrants in New York City, were to form a city, they'd probably be the 3rd or 4th largest city in the United States.
As it reads from the United Nations' own website on replacement migration, United Nations projections indicate that over the next 50 years, the populations of virtually all countries will face population decline and population aging. The report considers replacement migration for 8 low-fertility countries: France, Germany, Italy, Japan, Republic of Korea, Russian Federation, United Kingdom, and the United States. Ask yourself, do we really need the United Nations' help? During the baby boom following World War II, nearly 80 million babies were born, and for some reason we can't do that again?
Your child's school nearly doubled its enrollment.
The result? Classroom shortage.
There weren't enough classrooms and desks.
They gave my boy half a seat.
To give every student some kind of education, many schools had resorted to teaching kids in shifts.
Not too bad.
Students sat at their desks for just 2 hours and then went home.
Instead, bumbling, stumbling Joe Biden would have us all replaced in favor of a New World Order autocracy of which he is an acolyte and a puppet.
The affirmative task we have now is to actually create a new world order.
His deceptive intentions are so transparent, a 5-year-old can read between the lines.
I think this generation can be marked by the competition between democracies and autocracies, because the world is changing so rapidly. The autocrats are betting on democracy not being able to generate the kind of unity needed to make decisions to get in that race.
Does anyone know who this person is? Yes. What is her name?
Maxwell.
Who is this person?
Maxwell. Is it the lady who got killed?
This is one of the sisters who got killed on Thursday. Anyone knows her name?
No.
Anyone knows what is her crime?
No.
She was Christian, and she was.
Her crime is to be Christian.
It's nothing new. Christianity is under attack worldwide, from North Korea to Yemen to China to Somalia. Alarmingly, the persecution of Christians is exponentially getting more severe than ever. The number of Christians facing extreme levels of persecution for their faith rose from 245 million to 260 million last year in the top 50 countries on the World Watch List. Of the top 50, 45 countries have been designated extreme or very high in terms of the levels of persecution Christians face. That's 5 more countries than the previous year. Attacks against churches have risen 500%. On average, 13 Christians are killed every day because of their faith. And speaking of faith, overall, Americans' membership in houses of worship continued to decline last year, dropping below 50% for the first time in a Gallup poll's 8-decade trend. In 2020, 47% of Americans said they belonged to a church, synagogue, or mosque, down from 50% in 2018 and 70% in 1999. Many believe it's hardcore not to be a Christian, but Christianity was punk rock 2,021 years before the first poser tricked out their mohawk. Christianity, at its core, is persecution of the truth. And that persecution of the truth is the heart and soul of the Bill of Rights. It is the lifeblood of freedom, and totalitarianism despises it.
Out! Out! Out of this property! Immediately until you come back with a warrant. Out! Out! Do not come back without a warrant. You understand that? You're not welcome here. Nazis are not welcome here. Gestapo is not welcome here. Do not come back, you Nazi psychopaths. Unbelievable, sick, evil people. Intimidating people in a church during the Passover. You Gestapo, Nazi, communists, fascists. Don't you dare coming back here.
The pandemic has resulted in previously unimaginable restrictions on individual liberty. Now, notice what I am not saying or even implying. I am not diminishing the severity of the virus's threat to public health, and putting aside what I will say shortly about a few Supreme Court cases, I'm not saying anything about the legality of COVID restrictions. Nor am I saying anything about whether any of these restrictions represent good public policy. I'm a judge, not a policymaker. All that I'm saying is this, and I think it is an indisputable statement of fact. We have never before seen restrictions as severe, extensive, and prolonged as those experienced for most of 2020.
Those at odds with the message of Jesus of Nazareth, whether through deception or outright violence, pretend to be strong, but without the truth they are incredibly feeble. It takes a strong heart and soul to endure the persecution and fight for the freedom that is slipping right out of our hands.
Hello and welcome. It's Doug Diamond here. It's the Diamond Report Live. Thank you guys for showing up tonight. It's kind of a holiday in the U.S. here. We call it Father's Day, so happy Father's Day to all out there, all you dads. You know who you are. I am one of them. So yes, happy Father's Day 2024. It's 13 p.m. on Sunday night, June 16th, 2024. Thought we'd have a look at the news. Before we do, though, let me just read through this real quick. I thought this was kind of a cool little post. Happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. Hope you have a wonderful day as you deserve. Thank you for the important work you do. Psalm 103:13, as a father has compassion on his children, so the Lord has compassion on those who fear him. So, pretty good. Words to remember. So, let's take a look at some of the news. We've got some Hal Turner radio show tabs pulled up here, so quite a few tabs across the top of my screen. So we will see how far we can get tonight. So the first article I pulled up on Hal's website. Folks, I don't want to scare you, but we are rapidly running out of time. World War III, coming soon to a world near you. All right, this op-ed piece is from Hal. He says, as reported on his site earlier today, President of Poland publicly proposed the forcible breakup of Russia into 200 ethnic states. Have you heard that anywhere else? He did this in Switzerland in front of 78 other countries attending the peace conference for Ukraine. So that's 78 countries against Russia, i.e. World War. The idea of breaking up Russia was first proposed by Gunther Fellinger, chairman of the Austria NATO non-governmental organization NGO of Austria, in April last year. His idea called for breaking up Russia into 41 separate countries, and he was traveling here in the U.S. at the time to push his idea. He even created a map showing how he envisioned Russia being broken apart. Isn't it nice? He's got the thumbs up and all the different flags all over the place in Russia. I don't think Putin would approve. Says, at the time, I thought this idea was so ridiculous as to be laughable. Now I see it has gained official traction, with the president of Poland formally proposing to 78 other nations at the ongoing Switzerland Peace Conference that Russia be divided not into 41 countries, but into 200 ethnic countries. Fellinger's idea has not only gained traction, it's gotten far worse. Do any of the people attending this conference who have embraced the idea of breaking up Russia ever stop to consider that the Russians may have a thing or two to say about this? Russia has the actual ability to nuke all of them. Do they think Russia would even hesitate to do exactly that if faced with being forcibly broken apart? I think that they probably do think that, unfortunately. I think they think that Russia will not do this. But I tend to believe that they will, to defend themselves. Anyway, there is quite a bit here on this op-ed piece, and Hal is begging people to make sure you get emergency supplies for you and your family. He has been saying this for many, many, many months, probably years, on his radio show. And I tend to agree with him. I think that he is exactly right. No one knows the exact timing, but it does seem to be getting closer each and every single day. So we will see what the summer brings, I suppose. Summer is officially here this week, I guess. At the Peace Conference in Switzerland, Poland proposes breaking up Russia into 200 ethnic states. Poland just signed its own death warrant. So this is a further, more news-based piece versus an op-ed piece. But I will link to this in the Substack post that I put out on Tuesday. Or, of course, you guys can go to Hal's website, halturnerradioshow.com, and have a look at all of these links that I am starting with on the show tonight. NATO rejects Russia's peace proposal, except it is not NATO's place to even have such an opinion. NATO nitwit Jens Stoltenberg announced that NATO rejects the peace proposal put forth by Putin Friday. Stoltenberg's body language, stuttering, stammering, folding his arms, seemed to show even he doesn't believe his own words. There's a video here if you want to watch him. The process his body language went through during that was incredible. What I'll do is I'll play this and leave it muted so you guys can watch him while I'm talking. All the way to defensively folding his arms. He flaked out towards the end when he started stuttering, gesturing around, folded his arms and stuttered a bit more. Something's not right. You could tell he didn't believe a darn thing he was saying. LOL. Why is NATO defending a non-NATO country like they know what's best for them? If he loves fighting Russia so much, let him go to the front lines. Most Ukrainians don't even want to fight Russia, let alone be fed into a NATO meat grinder. So there's Jens, yeah. So anyways, you can kind of see here. There he is with his folded arms. So yeah, makes you really wonder if he believes what he's up there blabbing about. Unlocked. This is a story on his site that he had locked for subscribers only. Now he's got it unlocked. S-500 deployed earlier than expected. Posture now consistent with nuclear first strike. I really think the mainstream media and the idiots running the American empire actually believe that Putin and company won't do a first strike, won't do a nuclear first strike. And who knows if they will or not. But they seem to be betting everything, including all of our collective lives, on it. Or perhaps that's exactly what they want, so that then they can proceed with World War III and their plans as such. It says yesterday this website and radio show reported that Russia has suddenly commenced nuclear launch exercises with their naval group off the coast of Florida. What I chose not to report on was at the same time Russia expanded its ongoing tactical nuclear weapons exercises from the southern military district to also include the Leningrad military district near St. Petersburg. The unannounced missile drills off the coast of Florida was nerve-wracking enough, but the added information about the expansion of tactical nuke drills to the area around St. Petersburg was just emotionally over the top. It says today, things got exponentially worse. Overnight, Russia deployed the second generation of its S-500 air defense systems around Moscow, St. Petersburg, and Russia's strategic nuclear missile silos. The second generation system, the undisputed pinnacle of the air defense systems in the world, was not expected to be ready for deployment for at least another 6 months. The fact that Russia deployed them last night, and this article is dated June 13th, so this was several days ago now. The fact that they deployed them last night and did so at very significant numbers for which mass production wasn't even known to be ready, never mind active, around Moscow, St. Petersburg, and their strategic nuclear missile silos, has now changed the balance of power completely. There's no gentle way to say this, I'm just going to say it. This posture is one that would be expected if Russia was planning a nuclear first strike upon the West and was readying to defend itself from the counterstrike. So this is something that Hal has detailed throughout the course of his radio show for many weeks, off and on. So something to take into consideration. And then I wanted to show this one just because I mentioned that, summer's here. Obviously, we all know this. It's starting to get a lot warmer most likely where all of us are. It says global warming, ? Winter storm warning for Montana. 12 inches of snow Monday into Tuesday. Well, it is Montana. And they do have something called chemical ice nucleation, which I think is what is going on here. So this is Hal saying that it can't possibly be global warming, but I don't think he knows about geoengineering chemical ice nucleation, at least that process. So anyway, something to have a look at on his website. And then the next site that I have pulled up here, some different articles from needtoknow.news. Hunter Biden convicted of 3 felony gun charges. So he is a convicted felon, just like some other people that we've heard about recently. Biden was found guilty of 3 felony gun charges that include lying on a federal forum about his drug use to purchase a gun in 2018, submitting a false statement into federal record, and illegally retaining the gun for 11 days as an unlawful drug user. But his name is Biden, so that's all that really mattered. Hunter is facing up to 25 years in prison and up to $750,000 in possible fines, which was probably about a week's worth of work at Burisma. However, as a first-time offender, legal experts have raised doubts over whether the first son would see any prison time at all, never mind the fact that Donald John Trump also has 0 offenses and will likely be serving how many years in prison coming up for a crime that was not even a crime? Not anywhere near what Hunter Biden has done, of course, but it doesn't matter because he's on the wrong side of the political spectrum. Conservatives say that this verdict is being used to cover up the Biden family's larger crimes that include allegations of massive bribery payments from Ukraine and China. The Department of Justice allowed the statute of limitations to expire on Hunter's most serious tax charges and attempted to give Hunter a sweetheart deal with broad immunity. Yeah, do you suppose he'll get the old presidential pardon before Biden leaves office? My guess is probably so. At the last second. Joe Biden is a staunch advocate of restrictive gun control laws and once signed a bill to increase penalties for one of the charges that his son was just convicted of. The president says that he will not pardon his son. He may not remember who his son is, though. It's possible. Hunter Biden is also facing 9 tax charges in California, and he's set to stand trial there in September. So, yes, this is me holding my breath. Not really, of course. Yeah, so this is much ado about nothing, I'm afraid. Doesn't matter because he has the correct, acceptable last name, and he can do anything he wants because he's above the law, as we've all found out. Unlike the rest of us. EPA sued for allowing sewage that contains forever chemicals to be used as fertilizer. So we go from Hunter Biden to sewage. I thought that was a good transition. It's pretty much the same topic. Biosolids is a sewage sludge that's been flushed down toilets and includes waste, chemicals, microplastics, heavy metals, and more. It's being used as fertilizer on American farmlands. The EPA estimates that more than 2.4 million tons of biosolids are applied to land annually as fertilizers on farms, pastures, parks, home gardens, and other lands. A group of farmers and ranchers whose livelihoods and health were decimated after PFAS-laden biosolids from neighboring properties leached onto their land have filed a lawsuit against the U.S. EPA. PFASs are known as forever chemicals because they do not readily break down in the environment and they bioaccumulate in our bodies and biomagnify in the food chain. Under the Clean Water Act, the EPA is required to identify toxic pollutants in biosolids and adopt regulations to prevent harm to human health or the environment, but has failed to do so because their real job is to make sure all this stuff is totally fine and does not get stopped. That's the real job. Dr. Kaufman, right here, Dr. Andrew Kaufman, has a video about how you can avoid biosolid pollution. He will be a guest speaker at Red Pill Expo coming up, which is this weekend. It's going on right now. So yeah, here's a article here about that. So have a look at that if you want more info on biosolids. Not something we're hearing a lot about other than the alt media, of course. Bombshell, Lindsey Graham says the war in Ukraine is over $10 trillion in mineral resources. Yep, he did say that. U.S. Republican Senator and war hawk Lindsey Graham spilled the beans that the war in Ukraine is over minerals and other natural resources. He said, quote, "What did Trump do to get the weapons flowing? He created a loan system. They're sitting on $10 to $12 trillion of critical minerals, and Ukraine could be the richest country in all of Europe. I don't want to give that money and those assets to Putin to share with China. If we help Ukraine now, they can become the best business partner we've ever dreamed of. That 10 to 12 trillion of critical mineral assets could be used by Ukraine and the West, not given to Putin and China. This is a very big deal," end quote. So he has come out and said this is why they're trying to stop Putin. This is why we would be going into World War III. It has to do with money. And what they're saying is natural resources and mineral resources. So at least that's part of the picture. So yes, he did say that. Anyway, article on needtoknow.news. Idaho government shuts down water for 500,000 acres of farmland in latest effort to engineer mass famine. I mentioned this last week as well. Idaho Department of Water Resources issued a curtailment order for farmers using underground irrigation in 6 districts that affect 500,000 acres. Thousands of farmers across the Snake River Plain must now abandon their fields or face steep fines. Critic Adam Young warned that this order will upend the local and regional economies of eastern Idaho as family farms, grain merchandisers, potato warehouses, food processors, truckers, input suppliers, and equipment dealers see their business models evaporate, and as banks face the prospect of widespread defaults. He says Idaho has plenty of water. The reservoirs are filled. The snowpack was above average. More than 200 billion gallons of water were released to prevent flooding, and the state's rivers have swollen beyond their banks. It's almost as if the powers that be in Idaho want to starve the state's farmers of water in order to create a food crisis. I think that's exactly what's going on, because they know that it will trickle down to the entire food supply across the U.S. Shut off the potatoes. So look for the price of French fries to skyrocket, is my guess. Now, I don't know, but it's not good. Not good at all. So more mass famine coming, apparently. Engineered mass famine. Judge sentences 75-year-old woman for blocking abortion clinic and ridicules Christian faith. Paulette Harlow, an elderly 75-year-old activist in poor health, was sentenced to 2 years in prison for praying for praying outside of a Washington, D.C. abortion clinic 4 years ago. Judge Colleen Collar Cotelli taunted Harlow's husband, who is afraid that she may die while incarcerated, when the judge said she hoped Harlow would make an effort to remain alive. Quote, make an effort to remain alive, as if it were a tenet of Harlow's religion. Harlow and 9 others attended what they described as a rescue at the clinic that involved using chains, bike locks, and ropes to block the clinic entrance for more than 2 hours. 9 were found guilty, violating the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances, FACE Act, and conspiring, they're conspiracy theorists and conspiracy doers apparently, conspiring to violate civil rights. The FACE Act had been around for decades, but prosecutions under it have ramped up under the Biden administration's Department of Justice, or the Biden administration's Department of Injustice. The defense attorney that said because FACE charges were paired with conspiracy charges, this allows a longer prison sentence, up to 10 years, and made it possible to convict 10 people when only 2 or 3 people did the actual blocking. So yes, they're going to put this 75-year-old woman away for at least a couple of years, and the judge says to her to make an effort to remain alive. Isn't that nice? So, but yes, of course, that's what they're doing. They're throwing the book at anybody who protests abortion in any way. George Clooney's foundation to issue arrest warrant requests for journalists whose reports favor Russia. The Clooney Foundation for Justice. I'm not joking here. The Clooney Foundation for Justice has an initiative called the Docket Project. Legal director for the Docket Project said they are submitting requests to initiate criminal proceedings and secret arrest warrants against journalists whose reporting is favorable to Russia in European countries that have laws against war propaganda. So apparently there's only one side that gets to have the propaganda, and that's the Clooney and left side. Clooney Foundation is also looking into asking the International Criminal Court to investigate certain journalists' involvement in what they are terming incitement to genocide. Although she concluded that this is legally complex and the court is already overloaded, it appears they are looking into every avenue possible to censor reporters whose information they find inconvenient and unflattering. George Clooney has a long history of working with U.S. State Department, U.S. intelligence agencies, and is alleged to be working with the CIA and former President Obama. There you go. Clooney's wife is a lawyer who was in the news recently supporting the request for arrest warrant by the ICC against the Israeli PM Netanyahu, which critics say in his favor so that he may play the anti-Semitic card. His popularity has increased. So, of course, maybe that one is, they might have that one right, actually. Netanyahu is a war criminal for sure. Yeah, the Verb Homefront says George Clooney is a phenomenally stupid Hollywoodite. Yes, he sure is. Yep. And definitely an intelligence asset. Not saying he's intelligent. I'm just saying he's working for the intelligence agencies. And this has been pretty well known, as has some of his other co-stars over the years. Ben Affleck and others. So, yep. I saw this one and wanted to mention it. This is something that you should probably check out. I'm not going to play the video just because it's kind of long, but it's called Scam Alert. Do you know what the GDP means? What GDP means and how the government uses it against you? Jerry Day, who again has been a guest at least once on Lost Arts Radio some time ago, and he's a really neat guy. He's got some really interesting, good videos on his YouTube channel. He's an Emmy award-winning media producer, songwriter, and freedom fighter. Explains how the gross domestic product, GDP, is a government scam and how bankers make money when the economy is booming and when it busts. So he does a good job of explaining how, in this video, it's 11 minutes. He does a good job of explaining in that short time how they make money no matter what happens. So whether boom or bust, the bankers make money no matter what. So I would highly recommend checking out that video. So yeah, Jerry Day, he does really good work. And that's on needtoknow.news. And then on Slay News, yet another Boeing mishap. Packed Boeing passenger jet, Southwest flight, I guess, malfunctions mid-flight and suffers a terrifying Dutch roll. Now, a Dutch roll is not what you think it is, probably. It's not like when it's literally flipping over, doing a cannonball roll type of thing, but it's sort of a back and forth, and it says that it did actually mess up the plane, apparently. It says federal aviation authorities have launched an investigation after a packed Boeing 737 passenger jet suffered a malfunction and entered into a terrifying Dutch roll mid-flight. Officials with the FAA are investigating. They're looking into it. The atypical rolling maneuver that occurred during a Southwest flight, which was carrying 175 passengers at 32,000 feet in the air. The incident resulted in a significant damage to the aircraft that left it out of service. It's a 2-year-old plane traveling from Phoenix to Oakland on May 25th when its tail began to wag left and right. So it's wagging the dog. His tail is wagging the dog. Pretty interesting. So yes, it began to wag left and right. The movement caused the plane's wings to rock from side to side. The phenomenon is known as a Dutch roll. Causes major damage to the plane. Says the motion is said to mimic a speed skater, a sport in which the Dutch are famously dominant. So that's why they call it the Dutch roll, I guess. However, the pilots were able to regain control and safely land in Oakland. So they did make it. And no other further mishap, but yes, a Dutch roll. Yeah, it sounds like a Little Debbie's neck. That's a good point. It really does. I think I've had one of those before. A Dutch roll. One popular X account believes this damning news clip is a sure sign Joe will be replaced at the convention. Well, I don't know. Maybe. Maybe not, though. Democrats are not stressing over declining poll numbers because they know he's not going to be the nominee. More and more public displays of his dementia, they will replace him at the convention, this says in this tweet. So he's sort of wandering off and not paying any attention to the parachuter and the other G7 attendees here. It says, trust us, we've examined every angle of the Biden be gone theory. And unless Joe is coerced, threatened, or personally concludes it's time to step down, he's likely staying put. Yeah, that's what I've heard too, that he doesn't want to leave, and Dr. Jill does not want to leave either. That's what I've heard. So, will they have to be forced out? I don't know. So that is on revolver.news. This one too. Watch, Alabama Secretary of State says he's got proof illegals have been registered to vote. Anyone with a shred of common sense can see that the invasion at the U.S. border is no accident. Right off the bat, Biden scrapped all of the effective border policies that Trump had implemented to safeguard Americans in the country. Why would he do that? If not to swing the doors wide open and let millions of illegal border crossers flood into the U.S. The regime assumes most Americans are too clueless to catch on. Fortunately, that's not the case. Polling shows the border invasion is a top election issue, but unfortunately the damage is already done. Yes, says the good news, when Trump wins back the presidency for the third time, he's going to wipe the slate clean of all Biden's destructive failed policies. See, that's where I think you're wrong, but I would love to be wrong, but I don't think that's what's going to happen. What do you guys think? I mean, on paper it looks like that could happen, but I don't think. I think the left has some other things up their sleeve, most likely. So anyway, but this article is about the Alabama Secretary of State saying he's got proof that these illegals are being registered to vote, basically. So, not a shocker. Says proof illegal migrants signed up to vote after inviting millions of illegals into this country over 3.5 years, Alabama's Secretary of State says he's got evidence that the Biden administration is working to now sign these people up to vote in his state. So anyway, obviously, that's what's going on. At least that's part of it. The other part of this whole thing is Cloward and Piven, as you guys know. It is to overwhelm the system, to make the system collapse. Yeah, I'll believe it when I see it on that one. Yeah, I think so too. I just don't see that happening. As far as Trump saving the day, Trump is not our savior here. Not saying we don't need a savior, but the real savior is the one and only, Jesus Christ, not Trump. So, next article from Slay News: Biden's ghostwriter admits deleting audio files to block special counsel investigation. This is a different twist on something I mentioned probably a couple of weeks ago. Biden's ghostwriter has admitted to deleting audio files to prevent special counsel investigators from reviewing the recordings. Now, what they were saying, though, if you remember, was that they didn't want the recordings to fall into the wrong hands because using AI, someone could manipulate Biden's voice and make him sound like he's saying something that he's not really, when all you have to do is listen to what he's really saying, and you can't really get any worse than what he's already saying. So this is just an additional step here. It says, writer Mark Zwonitzer admitted to the FBI last year that he deleted numerous audio files of interviews he had with Biden. According to a transcript that has recently been unsealed, Zwonitzer revealed that the special counsel investigation influenced him to erase the recordings to protect Biden. Sounds a little bit like something else that happened in the 70s, doesn't it? Erasing tapes? Except this is audio files. Says, as he learned about the special counsel investigation, he apparently reflected on sessions he had with Biden. During those sessions, Biden shared classified documents with Zwonitzer. Worried Biden would get in trouble for doing so, Zwonitzer decided to delete the recordings when he learned of the special counsel investigation. He was helping Biden write a memoir, Promise Me Dad, when the recordings were made. So in order to protect the guy. What would if that would have happened with Trump and his ghostwriter? Do you think they would be all upset, or do you think they would be just like, oh, it's not a big deal? Yeah, that's what I think too. Hurt noted that the files held significant evidentiary value. Now, Her is the special counsel. However, the special counsel ultimately decided not to charge him. This is even though Zwonitzer admitted that at least some of the reasoning behind the decision to delete the recordings was to get rid of possible evidence against Biden. He said that he was aware of special counsel investigation when that happened, referring to the deletions. So he knowingly did this, and yet this guy's walking around free, and Biden is still the president. Even though he's the fake president, he's still there. Then he tacitly admitted the investigation had influenced him, saying, I'm not going to say how much the percentage of it was my motivation. So he's just totally covering everything up, and is fine because it's the Bidens and the left. And remember, it said, Her said that Biden isn't facing any charges because he's too old and senile. That's literally what they said. And even though that's correct, that doesn't usually let you off the hook unless you have an awful lot of influence, your name is the right thing, and you have the right political persuasion. The recording from Her's interviews could explain why he believed Biden could not stand trial. So yeah. Anyway, pretty bombshell evidence, really. But yeah, it's, again, like I always say, it's okay if they do it. It really is. Postmillennial.com, Denver Democrat mayor buses illegal immigrants to Utah amid Biden's border crisis. So get ready, friends in Utah. Says Denver, Colorado has been paying for bus tickets to ship illegals up to Salt Lake City. According to a report from K2KU-TV, Mayor Mike Johnson, Denver, Colorado, has officially sent around 2,000 illegal immigrants to Utah. Denver City County Department of Human Services spokesman told the outlet. Any individual who travels through our system makes their own decision on their destination. We are simply helping people connect with family, friends, and existing support systems, even though they're illegals and they know no one. So, nice try. Anyway, yeah, it says 2,000 people sent to Salt Lake City. There's some other numbers here as well, mentioning some other locations, but this is specifically talking about Utah. So, anyway, yep, they're shipping them all over the place, everywhere, all over the U.S., registering them as Democrat voters. Seattle to allow illegals to join the police department. Of course they are. Says they will be allowed to use firearms despite being in the country illegally. They'll be able to arrest U.S. citizens too, is my guess. Let's see what this says. Seattle Police Department will turn to illegals in an attempt to address its manpower woes, according to Law Enforcement Today. The city will take advantage of Senate Bill 6157, signed into law by Democrat Governor Jay Inslee, to allow it to recruit illegals with DACA or Dreamer status. Since Dreamers, quote unquote, are in the country illegally, they're Dreamers, all right, they are not allowed to carry a firearm, but Biden's ATF ruled that DACA recipients could carry weapons and possess ammunition as part of law enforcement roles. So, I was saying this many, many months ago that the illegals, when they are coming across the border, someone's going to start arming them. It looks like this is how they're going to do it. It says in LA, Police Chief Michael Moore, how about that name, changed department policy so that DACA recipients who are members of the police department could carry weapons off-duty, but reclassifying off-duty hours as part of their performance of their official duties. They could carry weapons when they're off-duty. So they're just changing the rules to make sure it fits. Staffing in the police department is at levels not seen for some 70 years. Yes, because it's called defund the police. They were pushing that in all kinds of blue cities. As of December 31st last year, there were only 424 police officers working in the department, with 66 eligible for retirement and 84 over the age of 50. Senior members of the Police Officers Guild told Law Enforcement Today that the low staffing level was due to the left-wing city administration's anti-police mindset. Of course, they knew that they were risking their lives being there in that role, which of course they were. Yeah, all of this while our veterans live in tents on the side of the road. Miss Emily says, yeah, exactly. They're bringing in the illegals to replace all of us. And not only a permanent voting block, but a permanent human block, if you ask me. CNN is harassing Ticketmaster and venues to cancel Tucker Carlson's tour over his, quote, hateful rhetoric. I don't think Tucker Carlson has ever hated anybody. Have you ever heard him talk? I mean, it's just insane. CNN is up to its usual tricks. In a report by CNN's media reporter and anti-conservative attack dog, Oliver Darcy, which name I've mentioned on this show before, the company confirmed that it had spent the week harassing Ticketmaster and various venues to demand they cancel Tucker Carlson's upcoming nationwide tour. Yeah, and he was asked about this, and he said he doesn't care. It's not going to stop him. He will get a bullhorn and go into a field and just start yelling if he needs to. And I think that he'll still get more people coming to see him talk than CNN has. What do you think? So anyway, Ticketmaster is pretty left-leaning, so they may very well capitulate to what CNN is saying. I would not be surprised if they shut it down. We'll see where it goes. All right, Zero Hedge, why nearly half of U.S. online job postings are fake. Amid complex hiring processes, a shadow is spreading in the American business world. Companies are using fake online job openings to project an image of growth, keep existing employees motivated, and cultivate a pool of possible future candidates with no intention of hiring, according to research. So in other words, it's all a total, complete scam. The practice is commonly known as ghost posting, and it accounts for 43% of online job openings across multiple industries. 43%. A Clarify Capital survey of more than 1,000 hiring managers showed that beyond fake growth metrics, the productivity drivers, 1/3 of professionals claimed they use ghost posts to placate overworked employees. The phenomenon has caused universal frustration in both the applicant and the hiring side. On average, it can take up to 8 weeks for a job seeker to receive an offer after submitting an online application, according to the job listing site Indeed. The process often includes resume tailoring, lengthy applications, and multiple rounds of interviews. That means applicants are wasting hours trying to get hired by companies that aren't actually looking. So this is something to keep in mind if you're out there job hunting. Just note that 43% of those postings are fake. They're not even companies that are looking for actual new employees. It says, consequently, it's not surprising that 55% of Americans say they're completely burned out from job hunting. Many hiring professionals say ghost posting hurts businesses that are actually trying to recruit new talent. Creating a pre-qualified pool of candidates for future openings is why 37% of surveyed hiring managers say they ghost post, but some will argue that it has the opposite effect. Ghost job postings are definitely problematic for companies legitimately trying to hire people. So they admit it, and yet they keep doing it. So anyway, Productivity Theater says the fake job listing trend isn't limited to applicants with a broad range of expertise. This guy that they're talking about here, Mr. LaMarche, recalled the case of a colleague with a niche skill set who also fell into this trap. The colleague worked with an X-ray system on machines to determine metal fatigue. The company scheduled an interview, but then ghosted, and the job posting is still up over a year later. Lamar said it's possible that these fake job postings are used for internal purposes, such as keeping the HR department busy or to avoid discrimination liabilities. So anyway, they're putting these postings out there, and they're fake. So just so you guys are aware. That's something that I was not aware of until I saw that article. In the old days, we had slumlords, but in 2024, we have van lords. Van lords. If you live in a major city, you can see them all around you. I am talking about aging vans, RVs, and trailers that are parked on the side of the road for months at a time that obviously have people living in them. This is an entire class of people that live in such conditions, and this is an entire class of businessmen that prey on such people. When I was growing up, there were lots of headlines about slumlords that were taking advantage of the poor. According to the dictionary, a slumlord is a landlord who receives unusually large profits from substandard, poorly maintained properties. Today, we have a different sort of problem. Van lords are parking vans, RVs, and trailers along the streets of the worst parts of our major cities and are renting them out to people that can't afford regular homes. Sadly, we live at a time when lots and lots of people cannot afford regular homes because homelessness is absolutely exploding all over the nation. Thank you, Bidenomics. I'm adding that. In some areas, there have been efforts to crack down on the van lords, but when things get too hot in one area, they just move somewhere else. As long as there are vast hordes of homeless Americans that are deeply suffering, there will be van lords that are eager to take advantage of them. So, if you didn't know about van lords, now you do. It says, in fact, it's being estimated that the number of people living in RVs in Los Angeles County actually increased by 31% from 2020 to 2023. The number of people living in RVs in LA County has jumped 31% from 2020 to 2023. About 11,500 people are estimated to live in roughly 6,800 RVs. With each passing day, more impoverished people are being forced out into the streets, and with each passing day, more formerly middle-class Americans are joining the ranks of the poor. Yes, and the illegals are taking those jobs. in some cases. For the ones you can get to work, of course. Because a lot of them are getting free funds, free tax dollars flowing into their pockets. So why bother working too? So that's on AmericaFirstReport.com is where that is. Now, Revolver.news, the notorious Wanda the Stuffer. Wanda the Stuffer, you may recognize her. Finally arrested on election fraud charges. Well, we've always been told the U.S. boasts the safest and fairest elections in the world, and that absolutely no one cheats, so it's downright shocking to hear another story about Democrat operatives being arrested for election fraud, isn't it? Of course, we're dripping with sarcasm here. We all know the real deal. Our elections are about as safe and fair as our current court systems, which seem to only work in your favor if you play by the regime's rules. Otherwise, you're out of luck. At last, one notorious ballot stuffer named Wanda Pataki, who was caught on film allegedly jamming ballot boxes to the brim, has finally been nabbed in Bridgeport, Connecticut. Well, they want to make sure she's safe so she can do it again in just a few months. Let's see. She's facing charges of election fraud and witness tampering related to the 2019 mayoral campaign. But really, this bust just scratches the surface, doesn't it? Makes you wonder if the same playbook was used in countless other elections. Of course it was. So, there she is here with these other people that were also busted. Wanda the Stuffer. So yeah, it doesn't even have to do with the whole mess going on that was outlined in 2,000 Mules. However, I think she was one of the people showcased in that, if I remember right. Anyway, yeah, pretty interesting. But I still posit that they just want to keep her safe because she's so good at her job. They need to make sure she's available for election 2024. All right, Blaze Media. Why does Michigan have more registered voters than it does citizens? That would be because they cheat. That's why. After Biden's supposed victory in 2020, Americans' faith in our election system has waned significantly. With November 5 just around the corner, people across the country are skeptical about whether or not we will have a fair election this time around. I can't believe anybody would only be skeptical. If you're only skeptical and still believe that it's possible, then you got another thing coming, in my opinion. Blaze TV host Sarah Gonzalez, along with Blaze Originals team, recently headed to Michigan to investigate the state's voting system. Granted, the swing state heavily altered its voting laws after Trump's victory in 2016. Yeah, they wanted to make sure that never happened again. What they uncovered suggests that a fair 2024 election is highly unlikely. For starters, in 2018, Jocelyn Benson replaced Ruth Johnson as Michigan's Secretary of State. Johnson, a Republican, was interested in doing the right thing when it came to protecting the voter rolls and keeping them secure and fresh and not outdated. However, Benson, who replaced Johnson, is Soros-funded and formerly worked for the Southern Poverty Law Center, investigating hate crimes. Boy, sounds like a real winner here, huh? Of course, you want to put her in charge of all the elections in the state. Makes total sense. Was part of the Secretary of State project that George Soros is funding. Benson attempted to allow Michigan to count ballots that were received after Election Day, and although she was unsuccessful in this endeavor, as a result of being sued, she did manage to enact same-day registration and registering without showing a photo ID policy. And then it's talking about Glenn Beck. He's shocked. You need a photo ID for everything. Anything, except for the most important thing a citizen can do. He asked in disbelief, noting that he recently had to present his ID in order to obtain a simple fishing license. Yeah, as you should, I suppose. But yeah, that's right. You don't need a photo ID for voting. Because that would be racist. Right? That's what they say. Anyway, but they'll be all for the digital ID, is my guess, when it happens. Whether it's used for voting, I don't know, but it will be used for everything else. So that's on theblaze.com. Thought this was kind of interesting. This is something that you may or may not have heard of. I don't know. Reported birth of a rare white buffalo calf. A rare white buffalo calf in Yellowstone fulfills Lakota prophecy. So there he is. A white buffalo. Helena, Montana, reported birth of a rare white buffalo in Yellowstone National Park fulfills a Lakota prophecy that portends better times, according to members of the American Indian tribe, who cautioned that it's also a signal that more must be done to protect the earth and its animals. The birth of this calf is both a blessing and a warning. We must do more, said Chief Looking Horse, spiritual leader of Lakota. Says the birth of the sacred calf comes after a severe winter in 2023 drove thousands of Yellowstone buffalo, also known as bison, to lower elevations. More than 1,500 were killed, sent to slaughter, or transferred to tribes seeking to reclaim stewardship over an animal their ancestors lived alongside of for millennia. Says this young girl here, Erin of Kalispell, took several photos of the calf shortly after it was born on June 4th. Her family was visiting the park when she spotted something really white among a herd of bison. Traffic ended up stopping while bison crossed the road, and then she got her camera, stuck it out the window for a closer look with her telephoto lens. I looked, it's this white bison calf, and I was totally floored. I thought this was kind of interesting. It says, for the Lakota, the birth of a white buffalo calf with a black nose, eyes, and hooves is akin to the second coming of Jesus Christ, Looking Horse said. Chief Looking Horse. Lakota legend says about 2,000 years ago, when nothing was good, food was running out, and bison were disappearing, white buffalo calf woman appeared, presented a bowl pipe and a bundle to a tribal member, taught them how to pray, and said that the pipe could be used to bring buffalo to the area for food. And as she left, she turned into a white buffalo calf. So that's the story. Anyway, kind of interesting, and it reminds me of the red heifers. So I hope this little guy watches out, because the powers that be in Jerusalem might come and get him and want to sacrifice him on the altar with the red heifers. So we'll have red heifer and white buffaloes, if they're not careful, on the sacrificial altar. No, I'm just joking, but pretty wild. Pretty wild. That's a new one. I'd not heard of a rare white buffalo calf. No, not sure if you guys ever have, but anyway, that's what's happened apparently in Montana. All right, Discern report why building the wall and mass deportations should be the biggest GOP campaign talking points, and yet they don't seem to be. Another election year, another zigzagging by Republican strategists, PACs, and campaign consultants who refuse to push the easy button for massive victories in November. This is what they do. Republicans are totally happy being losers. They're talking about Biden's many disastrous policies and embarrassing moments. They're talking about lawfare and the weaponization of the Department of Justice. They're talking about men competing against women, probably meaning in sports. And while all of these are very important, they're spending far too little time harnessing the threat that's on every voter's mind. The border invasion affects every American. Trump is talking about mass deportations, and that's great. He should be talking about the wall. But his messaging is far less concerning than what's coming out of every other mouth attached to a Republican campaign. They should be talking about the border crisis more than even Trump. Here are 3 reasons why this should be a real winning strategy. It's the economy, stupid. And then number 2, crime, crime, and more crime. And it's a Democrat issue, not a Biden issue. If you want to secure the border, become a Republican. Well, I don't know about that. Or definitely get out of the Democrat Party, at least. So, that's on Discern Report, yes. So, we'll see where it goes. But if there's even an election, I'm not sure that there will be. Sick of the grotesque game of pretend being played around Joe Biden. Biden is not well. Everyone knows this, even those who support him. The difference is they don't care, and that's the most frightening aspect of the situation. That's a quote from Ed Dowd. They're kidding, right? That Joe Biden is capable of being president? Not just for another 4-year term, but right here, right now? And this has got to be the most pitiful case of national gaslighting since 218 AD, when the Romans installed 14-year-old Heliogabalus to front for their empire. Like OJB, he reigned for 4 years before the Praetorian Guard offed him. Even the news media has begun to report that Joe Biden's senile mishaps. On Thursday, at an outdoor photo op during the G7 meeting in Italy, the old dog just wandered off from the assembled pack of world leaders until Italy's PM, Giorgia Meloni, went and reeled him back in. Yeah. And there's video of that if you guys want to watch it. Earlier in the week, Juneteenth party, they rolled him out on the White House lawn like a cigar store Indian, where he stood utterly frozen while all around him boogalooed and clapped to the music. So, yeah, he looked just like a wooden puppet, which of course he is. So, do you think folks are starting to notice? Well, I think so. But will it matter? Not so sure. Military draft coming, ? House passes measure to automatically register men for selective service. I mentioned this last week. The House of Representatives on Friday approved its version of the annual defense policy bill, effectively clearing the $883.7 billion National Defense Authorization Act to move forward in a 217 to 199 vote, which largely fell along party lines. Only 3 Republicans opposed it. Wow. A number of controversial amendments are part of it, setting up a further fight with Democrats as it moves forward, including a measure empowering the National Guard to crack down on the southern border. But among the most interesting aspects for the bill for the fiscal year 25 is an amendment to the NDAA, which automatically registers all draft-age male U.S. residents with the Selective Service System. Yes. And it says, Rep. Houlihan has been one of the leading advocates for proposals in previous years to expand draft registration to women as well as men. Her latest proposal for automatic registration of men only for a military draft indicates that she is more deeply committed to militarization than to any purported feminism. So anyway, yep, they want to draft the men and the women, sounds like. But this particular bill, in its current form, is men only, according to this. So that's on Zero Hedge. And so is this one. Nashville journalist faces jail time over trans shooter manifesto leak. Public records case over a leaked manifesto belonging to Audrey Hale, transgender individual who shot up the Covenant School, has spiraled into a contentious legal battle which could see a journalist tossed in jail if he doesn't reveal his source. Journalist. Yep. There's no such thing as journalistic freedom to conceal your sources apparently anymore. On Monday, Chancellor Miles of Davidson County ordered Michael Patrick Leahy, editor and owner of the conservative news website The Tennessee Star, to appear in court. He is to participate in a show cause hearing I'm sure it will be a show cause hearing on June 17th to address why he should not be held in contempt over his publication's use of the leaked documents. So, and then it says, except the Court of Appeals is too busy handling slip and fall cases to care that a journalist is about to be jailed. The documents which appear on the Tennessee Star may have come from former Lieutenant Garrett Davidson, a figure already embroiled in his controversies with the Nashville Police Department following a significant complaint filed after his departure. On Friday, meanwhile, a Nashville police lieutenant delivered a court declaration suggesting Davidson as the source of the leaks. Intensifying the scrutiny in the case, Davidson's actions has alleged raise profound questions about the motivations behind the repercussions of leaking sensitive information from an active police investigation. The situation has stirred a significant debate about the limits of press freedom, especially when it clashes with the law's demand for confidentiality in respect of court processes. Legal experts argue that while the public's right to know is paramount, the integrity of judicial proceedings must also be safeguarded to ensure fair and impartial justice. So it says this is insane. They're about to jail the brilliant journalist Michael Leahy for his obtaining a copy of the Transgender Covenant Killers Manifesto when the feds were trying to block it from the public being able to see it. So there's a lot here, actually. There's just kind of goes on and on here. But yeah, of course they were trying to cover it up because it made the transgender community look bad. Because guess what? They're the freaks out there killing people. Just like this girl who thought she was a guy. Been over it and over it many times on the show. But interesting that they're going to jail this guy who was the supposed... well, he's not the leaker. He's the guy that put the story out there on his publication called... what was it? Tennessee Star. So, anyway, very interesting. We'll see what happens. Storm pilot photographer captures breathtaking images from 40,000 feet. So, from 40,000 feet, storm pilot photographer Santiago Borja captures a series of breathtaking images from the most intense of storms. So, I thought these pictures were kind of cool. And if you're listening to this on audio only, you won't be able to see the pictures, unfortunately, but they're really interesting. He's at 40,000 feet, I'm assuming flying, with his camera. And yeah, he's taking these storm pictures. He's at that same elevation where the storm's happening. So it's definitely a perspective you do not get from the ground. So, very neat. So yeah, that's kind of a cool one. It's got some neat pictures on there. It's on Zero Hedge. And then next article is U.S. Department of Commerce to digitize the identities of all Americans receiving public benefits. Like your public benefits, you can keep your public benefits at a price. Your freedom. The federal government has adopted a whole of government campaign to enforce the adoption of a universal ID. When universal basic income is adopted in the future, only the tagged and bagged will be on the list. All others can eat sawdust. I think they mean bug dust. This is the heartbeat of the technocracy that has been in place since 1932. So yes, that's the digital ID system that they're really trying to push along with the CBDCs and everything else. Mark of the Beast system. California tests technocracy by taxing drivers for miles driven. The technocratic lunacy has been building for years. I wrote 3 years ago, this is probably Patrick Wood from this website. I wrote 3 years ago, Oregon was the first state to consider a mileage tax that would track all of your mileage with a GPS device on which roads or streets you drove, and then send a personalized tax bill to each driver. Isn't that nice? I mean, what else could AI possibly be used for? Excess mileage could be charged an extra carbon tax. Now, Buttigieg is bringing this to the national level. because that's why he was put in, most likely, to do this kind of stuff. Booty judge. So, yeah. Now, reclaimthenet.org, got a few headlines here. Biden team calls for social media disinformation censorship action after G7 mishap goes viral. This is, look it over there at Do the Woods when all the action is behind him. Look, and Giorgia Meloni is trying to show him what he's supposed to be looking at, but he's over here looking at the whatever in the woods. Of course, he might be actually taking a dump. You just don't know with this guy. He's not bent over, though, so maybe not. House Oversight Committee targets NewsGuard's media influence. Federal funding controversy and potential bias in media monitoring are at the heart of the investigation. Yeah, NewsGuard. When it says NewsGuard, that's more fake misinformation that is designed to find what they're calling misinformation, which is the truth. So yes, fact-checking is what that is. Broken promises. Canada's censorship law targets user-generated content despite assurances. New court filing suggests Online Streaming Act may regulate user content contradicting government promises. And then biometric ID for IRS FOIA requests trigger privacy and access concerns. Controversial technology. For sure. The hidden threat to your privacy, unmasking the third-party doctrine. As data sharing grows, the third-party doctrine increasingly jeopardizes personal privacy in the digital era. Rumble finds video of Google exec admitting to search engine bias. Marissa Mayer's candid revelation on Google's self-preferencing practices may become a pivotal piece of evidence in Rumble's antitrust lawsuit. So, and then the last one on Reclaim the Net. Indiana cop used facial recognition scans to perform non-work-related searches. I'm not sure he's allowed to do that. An Evansville officer's resignation reveals the murky misuse of powerful surveillance tools. Yep. So yes, if his last name would have been Biden, it would have been fine, but it probably wasn't. All right, and then the LibertyBeacon.com, Putin on G7 seized asset plan. Despite all the trickery, theft is still theft. So I don't know if you guys know about this. It says after Thursday, a group of 7 leaders agreed at a summit in Italy to give Ukraine $50 billion, utilizing interest from frozen Russian central bank assets. Putin has addressed the move during a speech before his Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He once again denounced this as brazen theft and described that Western leaders are trying to come up with some kind of legal basis for the asset freezes. But despite all the trickery, theft is still theft, and it will not go unpunished. I think he means what he says, don't you? Yeah, so there says there, Biden is saying that he's very pleased to share that the week of G7 signed a plan to finalize and unlock $50 billion from the proceeds of those frozen Russian assets and put that money to work for Ukraine. So they're literally going to use $50 billion in Russian assets to help Ukraine. They're going to use Russia's own money against them. So I'm surprised they hadn't thought of this before now. Someone obviously thought this was just a grand idea. Let's use Putin's money against him. So we'll see how far that goes, huh? Obviously, I don't think it's going to turn out well. Beijing seeks elimination of Taiwan, according to Taipei's new president. So, Taiwanese president has warned future military officers that Beijing will stop at nothing to take control of their self-governing island. Speaking at Taiwan's top military academy on Sunday, said cadets must understand the threats they face from the mainland forces. So, yeah. Biggest challenge is to face the powerful rise of China, which is destroying the status quo in the Taiwan Strait in regards Taiwan's annexation and the elimination of the Republic of China as the great rejuvenating cause of its people. So yeah, telling it like it is, huh? China remains committed to peaceful reunification. However, this prospect is increasingly being eroded by separatists for Taiwan independence. So yeah, they mean they're going to reunify once Taiwan gives up. I think that's what they mean. So that's on RT.com. 12 states refused to sign Zelensky's peace conference declaration. The UAE, India, Saudi Arabia, and Brazil are among the countries that have not supported the Swiss summit's final document. 12 countries attending the Swiss-hosted Ukraine peace conference have refused to sign the final communique. And the funny thing about the peace conference is Russia was not invited to attend the conference. So they're having a peace conference without Russia. Good one. Nope, we don't live in an upside-down world or anything. 5 people killed in Ukrainian strike on apartment block. So this is still Ukraine attacking inside Russia proper. 5 civilians were killed when Ukrainian troops struck a 5-story apartment block in the city of Shebankino in Russia's western Belgorod region in the early hours of Saturday. Death toll rose as rescuers recovered more bodies from the rubble of the residential building, which partially collapsed. So, man, they're attacking civilians who had nothing to do with any of this. The Ukrainian kamikaze drone hit a car in the village near Shebankino, killing the driver. On the same day, a woman was killed when the rocket struck her home in the village of, however you say that, while another person was hospitalized with shrapnel wounds after another village was shelled. So they are just going full force here, it sounds like. Ukraine is attacking innocent civilians in Russia itself. So not too surprising, but don't really see that reported much at all in mainstream or really even in alternative news media platforms. Justice Department won't prosecute AG, as in Merrick Garland, for contempt of Congress. Where have you heard that lately? Contempt of Congress. Department of Justice on Friday wrote to Congress that it would not prosecute U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland. Lawmakers in the House of Representatives voted 216 to 207 this week to hold Garland in contempt for not handing over subpoenaed audio tapes of Justice Department Special Counsel Hur's interviews with Joe Biden, which we mentioned earlier. Some of which, at least the one from the files from the ghostwriter were deleted. So this is the interviews with Special Counsel Robert Hur. Hur interviewed Biden on October 8th and 9th last year as part of the investigation into Biden's possible mishandling of classified documents from his time as president. Yes, but he's just too old and senile to prosecute him. So why is the Department of Justice declining to prosecute Garland? The DOJ wrote that Garland had not committed a crime in not handing over the audio tapes because they were protected by executive privilege. So there you go. And contempt of Congress, he gets a pass. And meanwhile, appeals court upholds Steve Bannon's contempt of Congress conviction. Because, you see, he's on the wrong side of the political spectrum. So he does not get a pass. Federal appeals court, you guys know about this probably, on Friday upheld the criminal conviction of Donald Trump's longtime ally, Steve Bannon, for defying a subpoena from the House committee that investigated the attack on the U.S. Capitol, which, of course, was not an attack. It was a demonstration, if nothing else. It was no attack. It was a Fed surrection. So they're going to hold Bannon in contempt of Congress. Meanwhile, Merrick Garland gets a pass for something worse. He committed an actual crime. Steve Bannon did not, but Bannon gets to go to jail. Double standard much? PeoplesVoice.tv. The WEF calls for a controlled demolition of global food system. Elon Musk sounds the alarm. U.S. voting machines are designed to allow fraud. Yes, stating the obvious, I know. MTG, when Trump wins, Fauci will be behind bars for life, which is part of the reason, because Fauci knows where the bodies are all buried. You know, according to Dr. Judy Mikovits, she said that all along. Fauci knows where the bodies are buried. Because of that, just by itself, Trump will not be allowed to win. That's what I fully believe at this point. Trump drops bombshell, White House funding the ISIS training. Which, that's something we knew that Obama and company were doing. Donald Trump promises to end gender insanity in schools. Hunter Biden to drop laptop lawsuit against Rudy Giuliani. Staff at UK University told to teach that whiteness and heterosexuality are problems. Staff at UK University. Yeah, it's a problem because it continues the human species. That's a problem. That's the problem they're talking about. Britain's David Cameron says we must go after everything Russian. So, once again, they want to divide it all up into 200 little pieces. 6,000 Dominion voting machines exposed miscalculating votes in Puerto Rico elections. And Harvard study claims aliens might be living among us disguised as humans. And of course, they've got a picture of Mr. Zuck here. So, yep, he's probably one of them. I don't think they mean aliens crossing in illegally. I think they mean space aliens. So, anyways, that's the headlines on peoplesvoice.tv, and then headlines on Information Liberation. Democrat leader Hakeem Jeffries demands immediate passage of ADL-backed Countering Anti-Semitism Act. So he's demanding that the ADL have their way. They want to start prosecuting anyone and everyone who dares challenge anything Israel ever does. That's what it's about. You cannot criticize Israel. If you do, that's the religion. Just like the trans LGBT stuff is the new religion as well. This is just as much a religion. You can't criticize it. State Department designates anti-Israel Nordic Resistance Movement a terrorist organization. You thought I was kidding. RFK Jr. says he opposes ceasefire in Gaza, and he supports denazification. He opposes a ceasefire in Gaza. Well, there's only one side doing the firing for the most part. SPLC lays off a quarter of their staff despite having nearly $1 billion in reserves. The Southern Poverty Law Center laid off a quarter of their staff on Wednesday. That's good news. AOC releases hostage-style video denouncing anti-Semitism in progressive spaces. She's becoming more and more shrill, I think, is the best way to describe her. Anti-Semitism czar scolds the Washington Post for fostering anti-Semitism by reporting on Jewish donors pushing protest crackdown. So there's so much stuff here about anti-Semitism. So this seems to be part of the next new religion that you can't dare question. So let's see here. Let's take a look at some of the article headlines here over on Daily Crow. New Nostradamus names date World War III will start, and it's just days away. That's on Daily Mail. So that's interesting. If you guys want to see any of these headlines, we'll go through real briefly. It's on dailycrow.com. Good website. Military draft coming. House passes measure to automatically register men for selective service. Mentioned that earlier. 12 states refuse to sign Zelensky's peace conference declaration. AI is digital control. You've been warned. Catherine Austin Fitz on USA Watchdog. Undoubtedly a really good must-see type of interview. She's very well informed and puts out some really good information on what's actually coming. Proof of Bible story about angels killing 185,000 soldiers in a night is uncovered after 2,700 years. And I've got that pulled up on a different tab. Nashville journalist faces jail time over trans shooter manifesto leak. I mentioned that earlier tonight. Black women behaving badly has become a national trend. Finally, someone compiled this pattern recognition masterpiece. I was beginning to think that black women were the only ones qualified to be DAs. It's on Revolver.news. Biden freezes at star-studded fundraiser before Obama comes in to his rescue and pulls him off stage. Let's see. Zach Voorhees. My God, this paper by that OpenAI engineer is terrifying. Everything is about to change. AI superintelligence by 2027. Situational-awareness.ai is where that one is. Muslim immigrants to French farmers were here to kill the whites. French farmers. Wow. G7 summit. Pope Francis to meet Biden in Italy. Oh boy, that would be quite the brain trust, huh? Wars and rumors of wars. World at war. Number of armed conflicts around the globe in 2023 was the highest since the end of World War II. It's a Daily Mail article. Pentagon official reveals tantalizing 7-minute encounter with glowing blue UFO, which emitted enough energy to power a small city. Wow. BRICS. Russia's Moscow Stock Exchange halts U.S. dollar and euro trading. Yeah. Final nail in America's coffin with J.J. Carell. This interview makes me hope Russia's warships off the coast of Florida nuke our nation into oblivion. This is a YouTube video. I did not watch that. I'm just reading the headlines here. And then back to Garland. Yes, it says Attorney General Garland targets conspiracy theories after launching election threats task force with FBI, sparking censorship concerns. Can foreign DNA control you? Part 1. Transplanted human organs can create new hobbies, predilections, and even a desire to kill among recipients. Where does the soul reside? So that's something that we actually covered last week when I talked about organ transplants and how people who have organs from different people put in them often have these different things that they do now that they never did before. Like, for instance, maybe now all of a sudden they become, vegetarian or vegan or something when they never were before because they got a new transplant of some organ from someone else who was that. So, very strange. While y'all are going about your lives, Russia is conducting marine exercises with nuclear-capable submarines just 66 miles off the coast of Florida. Yep. Trump is the righteous branch in King David, Christian lady says. I don't know about that. I think King Charles would argue with that person. Every prophecy watcher should watch this to the end. I'm unsure where I stand, aside from the fact that most of my brethren have become so sycophantically pro-Israel on every issue that any nuanced discussion or understanding of what's going on is nearly impossible. Yeah, this is something a friend of mine and I were talking about recently, how especially evangelicals, you can't have a discussion with them about Israel. They just, they go glassy-eyed and just defend absolutely everything Israel's doing. But they also don't understand that the current version of Israel is not the Israel in the Bible. Most people think that it is. And then, let's see, a federal judge struck down Florida's law that protects kids from gender experimentation, calling it unconstitutional. Okay, message to American people. American man on the street in Moscow, Russia. Yeah, that's a Greg Reese video. We did not watch that tonight, but I do have it queued up. If we have time, we'll come back to it. Russia could deploy ICBMs in Mexico, state TV warns. Ukrainian officials stole $490 million meant for the military. Yeah, because they're literally buying palaces in Switzerland. This came out like a year ago or more. Anyway, that's the articles, the headlines at least, over on Daily Crow. Satanic billionaires are funding thousands of journalists to promote the global net zero depopulation agenda. Yeah, journalists. Global net zero. Net zero is not possible. So the more you hear that, just every time you hear it, think it's not possible. Because net zero, the only way to get down to net zero carbon is for there to not be any carbon in what, of course, are most humans made of? Carbon. Adobe, this one affects me a little bit because I use some of their products. Adobe is going to start spying on all your images and videos to enforce new content censorship rules. Photoshop maker and Adobe recently changed its terms of service to give itself the power to look through your files and existing projects for so-called content moderation purposes. So I guess I better watch out. The new policy notes that they may access your content through both automated and manual methods, such as for content review. Yeah, and it's not like you can just unplug the Ethernet cable or switch off the Wi-Fi while you're using their product because it's constantly in communication with their servers. So if you did, then you wouldn't be able to use Photoshop, for instance. So, but luckily, I have a version of Photoshop that I use that does not connect to the internet, so I don't really have to worry about this too much, but I can see where this would not be good. This would not be good. Many Photoshop users won't accept Adobe's invasion of privacy. So this is kind of like, I think, going to end up being like their PayPal moment, hopefully, where they take a look at what they're doing and take a step back, which is what PayPal did. Now, they're still up to a lot of really rotten stuff, PayPal, I mean. But Adobe, hopefully they will learn their lesson here. They switched to a subscription model some time ago. So you can't just go buy a copy of Photoshop and install it on your computer anymore, unless you already had one, like I did. But yeah, it's a subscription model. So you subscribe and you get access to Photoshop and you have to agree to all of their terms or you can't use the product. And then if you don't agree to the terms, then you can't use the product. So you might as well uninstall it at that point. So good job, Adobe. Way to go. Alienating your own customer base. LeoHoman.com. Biden commits U.S. taxpayers to 10 years of blank check funding of war in Ukraine. 10 years. They're going to run out of people way before 10 years is up. War's dark side includes organ harvesting and child sex trafficking. Yep, they're all about that. That's what they're really in business for. Forget what Lindsey Graham is saying about all of the minerals and stuff. Right here, he's talking about coughs up the real reason why U.S. is providing unlimited funding to the Russia-Ukraine war. Hint, has nothing to do with preserving freedom or democracy, which is what they always couched it all in before. Yeah, it has to do with all of the minerals and stuff that we mentioned earlier. But it actually has to do with organ harvesting and sex trafficking just as much as anything else. Plus also all the biolabs over there that have been found. They don't want the Russians to get hold of those. All right, Wine Press News. Banking bust. Thought this was interesting. One of St. Louis's tallest office towers sells for less than 2%. It was originally worth $205 million. It just sold for $3.6 million. Welcome to Bidenomics. Well, and then also the COVID debacle, of course, has killed commercial real estate. I think that's a big chunk of it as well. Indiana becomes growing state for big tech data centers and crypto mining. Vows that the grid can handle it. So, Indiana lawmakers have assured mega corporations of ample amounts of low-cost power and water as they hope to attract and serve data centers and cryptocurrency mining operations in the region. So they're all about that, I guess. Companies flocking to Indiana. Hadn't heard that one, but yeah, they're all about the big tech data centers. That's not good. Not good at all. That's on Wine Press News. Ukraine signs 10-year defense agreement with U.S. at G7 meeting, the strongest agreement since Ukraine's independence. So I mentioned this earlier. They're all about extending the war and extending the money train. Bank of International Settlements launches Project Rialto to improve cross-border CBDC payments. The Bank for International Settlements is launching Project Rialto to explore how instant cross-border payments could be improved using a modular foreign exchange component combined with settlement in wholesale central bank digital currencies. So they are inching closer and closer to the one world currency. That's on Wine Press, and one more from there. End of Empire. 59 nations seek BRICS membership as leaders further quest to de-dollarize and end U.S. hegemony at BRICS summit. They want to de-dollarize and de-Nazify the world currency because it's the Nazis running things, right? Meaning the U.S. empire. Very important events taking place. BRICS is going full throttle to establish a new multipolar world as the world is rushing to get away from the collapsing American empire. Yep. Run now. The other way. That's what countries are doing. Rightfully so. Who can blame them? All right, this is one I mentioned earlier. Gateway Pundit. Ancient military base discovered, potentially corroborate Bible story of God's angel killing 185,000 Assyrian soldiers. This is on the Gateway Pundit. Researchers have uncovered an ancient military base that could potentially substantiate a Bible story involving God's angels defending Jerusalem from an Assyrian invasion. The story, as told in the Bible, recounts how God sent an angel to thwart an army of Assyrian soldiers intent on conquering the Holy Land around 2,700 years ago. The angel of the Lord is said to have descended upon the advancing military, killing 185,000 soldiers in a single night. Up until now, there have been no archaeological evidence to substantiate this event or even the battle itself. However, archaeologist Stephen Compton, utilizing modern mapping techniques, claims to have found compelling evidence that this epic confrontation indeed occurred. Well, it says, let's see, talking about the peer-reviewed paper. The Syrians, an ancient civilization from Mesopotamia, formed a formidable empire in the Near East. According to Britannica, the Syrians were frequently depicted as fierce and ruthless conquerors who lived in the area of present-day northern Iraq and southeastern Turkey. Sennacherib was the king of the Neo-Assyrian Empire from 705 BC until his death in 681 BC. 3 Bible stories, Isaiah 37, 36 through 38, and 2 Kings 19, 35, and 2 Chronicles 32, 21, detail how Assyrian soldiers were slain on the eve of their attack on Jerusalem. Wow. So this is some of the archaeological findings here, some of the pictures. The earliest aerial photograph of Jerusalem, lower left, with an oval fortification visible on a hill in the upper right. Okay. Below are the pictures from the peer-reviewed paper. So anyway, there's more info on here if you want to look at this, but I thought that was kind of interesting. They're saying that the Bible is true. Imagine that. Massachusetts House unanimously passes bill to allow women to sell their babies to highest bidder. Unanimously. Let's see. The bill was passed under the guise of LGBTQ rights. Under the state's current laws, paid and traditional surrogacy is permitted, but for traditional surrogacy, the would-be parents must adopt the baby and therefore pass a background check. Got to get rid of that. Additionally, at least one of the parents must be related to the infant. It says, however, adoption protects children from abuse during the well, they have to get rid of this then. To the regulations that are involved in the process. There is research in the negative outcomes for children who live with non-biologically related parental figures. You don't say. Yeah, child abuse skyrockets, I would imagine. The bill would also change the description of parenthood under the law from being based on biology or adoption to a person's intent to be a parent of the child. So you just have to say, yeah, I'm going to be his parent. Or its parent. Because you wouldn't want to suggest that it could be a boy or a girl The change will remove all mention of mothers and fathers from parental law, from parentage law, and replace them with gender-neutral terms, which is what I was just saying. The bill is now heading to the Senate for consideration. So, welcome to Massachusetts. Doing God's work, although not the God that you're thinking of right now. The God of this world. Cuban Missile Crisis 2.0. After Russian nuclear sub Kazan arrives in Havana, U.S. Navy sends first attack submarine USS Helena to Guantanamo Bay to show in a show of force. I don't think the Russians were too worried. Not since the end of the Cold War has the situation of military vessels around the island of Cuba been this delicate. A day after Russian stealth nuclear sub Kazan docked in the Havana port for a routine deployment, U.S. responded by deploying a fast attack nuclear submarine to Guantanamo Bay. So USS Helena is tasked with this mission. So yes, it's a one-upping, I guess, of each other. The Russian sailors were welcomed by the second commander of the Cuban Navy. I wonder if the U.S. people were welcomed. They told him to get out. Anyway, that's on the Gateway Pundit. Commie Pope Francis meets with pro-abortion comedians and says, their jokes make God smile. They make God smile. But to his credit, he didn't say which God he was talking about. So keep that in mind. On Friday morning, Commie Pope Francis met with 100 comedians from around the world, including death cult pro-abortion cheerleaders Stephen Colbert, Jimmy Fallon, and Whoopi Goldberg, telling them that their jokes make God smile. So, whatever you think on that one, huh? You can insert your own joke here, I think. In his address to the room, Red Francis, calling him, said, I look with esteem at you artists who express yourselves in the language of comedy, humor, and irony. How much wisdom is there? Yeah, it's because he agrees with their politics. That's why. But he didn't say which God. Jimmy Fallon and Whoopi and Stephen Colbert. Meeting the Pope. Whatever. Woman fired from Ohio news station for celebrating straight pride on social media post. So straight pride, we celebrate that around here as well. But no one's going to fire me for it. Madonna Chisholm Pinkard was fired as WFMJ TV's community relations director for sharing an unauthorized post during Pride Month. An unauthorized post. The station announced her termination in a Facebook post on Tuesday. Unauthorized post, so she's sharing something that the company just does not believe in, and that is straight pride. So, enough said on that. We know where they're standing. Celebrate straight pride. It's natural, it's worked for thousands of years, and you can make babies. Yep. And you can be happy. Imagine that. Not miserable like those other people. So that's on Gateway Pundit. Newest insanity from CNN. It's a conspiracy theory to say that America is a republic and not a democracy. So you guys have probably noticed this, I'm sure. Over the years, I have I would say, from governors up, certainly everybody at the federal level, but really from governors up, I've noticed that they always call it a democracy. You're harming our democracy. Well, we don't have a democracy. A democracy is two wolves and a sheep agreeing on what's for dinner. That is not what we have. That's not what was set up by the Founding Fathers, as you all know. But CNN says it's a conspiracy theory. It was never a republic. Says the far left network recently did an entire segment about the fact that Trump supporters and other people on the right insist correctly that we are not a democracy. The left has repeated their canned line about our democracy so many times that CNN is now trying to rewrite history to suit the Democrat Party. Well, that's what they do. So Anyway, not much point in pursuing that any further. You can see where it's going. Over 12,000 acres near Los Angeles is on fire. More than 1,200 people evacuated so far. So here we go again. Why would you want to live in Los Angeles? I just don't get it. Massive wildfire just outside Los Angeles has spread to 12,265 acres and was only 2% contained on Sunday afternoon. Hungry Valley Park is where it is. So, wow. They do have good firefighters out there, but man, the whole place is in, plus with all of the geoengineering spraying, it's just a tinderbox. It really is, the whole area. Very little rain, obviously. So, we talk about engineered forest fires and stuff on geoengineeringwatch.org. All right, so Bidenomics, again, iconic Tupperware company to close its last U.S. factory, will move all production to Mexico. Tupperware is leaving the U.S. Tupperware has confirmed that it will be closing its only American factory later this year. Company has over 10,000 employees. I didn't even know Tupperware was still around, but it is, and they're leaving. They've had enough. So, that's Bidenomics for you. It says right there. So, yeah, they're moving to Mexico. So, way to go. And speaking of plastic, the royal family. Princess Kate gives mixed health update amid cancer battle. I'm not out of the woods, she says. She treads the cancer treatment labyrinth of hopes and fears. Catherine, Princess of Wales, announced Friday she will make her first appearance on Saturday since January surgery revealed she had cancer. So I only brought this up because some of you out there who are tried and true, dyed-in-the-wool conspiracy theorists believe she's already dead and that she's just a hologram or whatever. I'm going to prove you wrong. Well, anyway, here it is. Red arrows fly over Buckingham Palace for King Charles' birthday, even though it's not his birthday. So I'll play this so you can see that she, in fact, is not dead. She, in fact, is not a hologram. She has a huge black and white hat on. I don't see how her neck can hold it up. But she's right there. She's not dead. She's not an AI hologram or whatever. She's still alive. She's standing by the soon-to-be Antichrist. He's right there. She has a nice, lovely little conversation with him. And they're celebrating his birthday, the one that's not his birthday. But I had to look into that because I didn't know that they did that craziness. They celebrate the birthday of the sovereign. They call him the sovereign. What a joke. Sovereign what? Sovereign Antichrist? Sovereign soon-to-be Antichrist? Anyway, they celebrate it was the queen before him. They celebrate the person in charge, their birthday, in June, no matter when the person's birthday is. And as I pointed out before, King Charles's birthday he was literally born 6 months to the day after Israel became a nation in 1948. 6 months to the day after that is when he was born, in November of 1948. So his birthday's in November. They're celebrating it this weekend. Apparently it's over several days even. And there goes the planes, celebrating how wonderful he is at being the Antichrist, or soon to be. The royals are such weirdos. Yes, they are. But anyways, apparently it's tradition, and we're not supposed to question it. And we're not supposed to believe that Kate's still alive. Because she's not. She's a figment of your imagination. She's not standing there waving with her children and her husband, who's apparently lost all of his hair at this point. And the royal whatever they are. So anyway, where are the weapons? Episode 6 is now out. I've been mentioning this series. I think it's a really good one. truthandmedia.com. The 6th episode investigates weapons deliveries to Ukraine, the lack of oversight in their deliveries, and the malignant movements that have gotten a hold of them. Yeah, they end up on the black market. It also exposes Zelensky's increased demands for military aid and the difficulties NATO has encountered in delivering them. So yes, this is part 6 of the Zelensky Unmasked series, which I think is really good. Highly recommend it. And the nice thing about it is the videos are short. Short videos, so they will save you some time. But yeah, I think it's worth checking it out. Truthinmedia.com, which is what's his name? Ben Swan's website. Who he's doing good work. Former Ben Swan, if you don't know, he's former mainstream media TV news anchor who got awakened to what was really going on in the world and decided to start his own alternative media company. So I think he's doing good work, from what I can tell. All right, speaking of the crazy king, is the old monarchy dying? This is an article I found on Activist Post. So many things are changing so fast, and here's another. An unprecedented amount of weirdness coming out of the British monarchy this year. Are we about to see a massive shift in one of the oldest human systems in the modern world? Talking about the demonic painting and all that stuff, which that's all true. And will it be shifting away from the monarchy? I don't know. I think it will be shifting away perhaps from the British monarchy to the actual Antichrist monarchy, if you want to call it that. So, I don't know. Just an interesting article and video here to check out. It's on TrueStream Media, which they always do really good work. So that is embedded here, a video embedded on activistpost.com. And then a couple more from the same site. Why the petrodollar is finished now. So I'm sure you guys probably know about this. The petrodollar is over. So this is going to have huge ramifications for us as Americans in the coming years. This is basically the final death sentence here on the American dollar, if you ask me. The birth of the petrodollar, 74 to 75, explains. And this is the background of how the, people always say, well, the U.S. dollar has been, it's printed out of thin air and means it has no backing, and that's all true to a degree. However, it was backed by oil. That's why it was called the petrodollar, and now that's gone. So it says Saudi Arabia has just changed the entire future of the U.S. dollar when it decided to end its 50-year agreement with the U.S. and the petrodollar. Saudi Arabia is now looking to BRICS in China for their future in this new multipolar world. What happens next for the U.S. dollar and BRICS? Let's break it down. And then there's a video here. So, anyway, yeah, I think that's something that we should not ignore. I'm not really a finance guy, but the whole idea of the petrodollar being gone is a huge one, and that's definitely going to affect us in this country very soon. It won't take long. Abstract 34, chemtrails, a Bush family business. So this is something that I didn't really know that the Bush family necessarily were involved directly in the different chemtrail programs, but that's what this is alluding to. Not sure if it's true, but this is just what they're talking about here. Besides their bosses, the Rockefellers, whom we will cover next week in this article, there is no other family with more known connections to today's chemtrail spraying operations than the Bush family, due to their well-established involvement with the CIA, the CFR, the Nazis, Enron, and the New World Order, secret societies, assassinations, weapons trafficking, financial fraud, drug trafficking, bioweapons, and more. Boy, they have a list of it all, don't they? They just do it all. I don't figure that you're too surprised. Yep, spraying tens of thousands of megatons of toxic waste over unsuspecting Americans would not be a stretch for the house that Bush built. In fact, it would be right up their alley. For the whole story here, please read this guy's book, which I'm not really promoting it. I'm just mentioning it. Book's been under troll attack lately. Please write a review. Well, if he's talking about anything that's true, of course it's going to be under troll attack. And then this is a whole article about how, they're in bed with the chemtrail folks, I guess. Bush and the Nazis. the Dresser Industries, Bush and Enron, Carlyle Group, which we know that's an outfit that is definitely involved. And then, of course, Bush and the CIA. So, yep. He was... Old George Herbert Walker Bush was apparently directly involved in literally calling some of the shots when JFK was assassinated. So, anyway, there is an article there on activistpost.com, and then a couple here from Not the Bee. The Senate Armed Services Committee. The Senate Armed Services Committee wants to begin registering women for the draft. They made a meme a reality. So, I mentioned this earlier. Well, it's time to look at what feminism hath wrought this week. Let's see. It looks like the girl bosses have finally lobbied their way into selective service. Yes, according to the recommendation from the Senate's Armed Service Committee, beginning in 2025, they'd like women to register for the draft. So, there it is. And then it says, yep, it's real. Here's the source, which is armed-services.senate.gov. So it's a real source. The National Defense Authorization Act, which I mentioned earlier, 2024 executive summary from Senators Jack Reed and Roger Wicker. So at least drafting our women and girls into the military against their will is bipartisan. Yes, there's a Republican involved and a Democrat. Here's the exact wording of the proposal. Quote, amends the Military Selective Service Act to require the registration of women for selective service. That's the draft, people. Although I'm sure feminists aren't eager to get drafted, they should be proud of their accomplishments. No more discrimination. Enforced conscription. The draft our daughters meme came true. It was met with fury, especially from conservatives who, for some reason, still have a seed of chivalry left and don't want their daughters drafted to fight for the global American empire. And then here's the tweet. We will not draft women. I'm with Chip Roy. This will happen over my dead body. Mike Lee says, Mike, I don't think they have a problem with that, buddy. So, anyway. It is the American empire what we're talking about, and dead bodies are their business. And then the other Not to Be article I pulled up. The California Exodus created a huge tax deficit. Democrat solution? Raise taxes and defund the police. Yeah. I mean, why wouldn't you do that? Being reliant on your citizens for tax money means having citizens available to tax, a luxury California seems desperate to do without. According to a Van Lines moving study, exodus out of California has not abated much since the pandemic. The state has lost millions of people over the last 4 years. 53.3% of those who left made over $150,000 per year. That's a lot of income that fled the state to the tune of $27.6 billion deficit in the current budget. Governor Gavin Newsom has recommended using $12.2 billion to California's rainy day California's rainy day fund. They still have a rainy day fund to cover some of the difference, but the rest needs to be cut or be paid with an increase in taxes. What needs to be cut and what stays is so typically Californian, they're almost sure to lose more citizens over the next few years. Yeah, aren't they going to start taxing people when they leave? That's what I heard. They literally are going to start taxing people when they move out. They're going to spread it out over quite a few years. Namely, they want to reinstate the unpopular rule that doesn't let businesses write off operating expenses for taxes. In other words, California businesses will be paying taxes on their gross income and not on their net profit. So that's one way to do it, I guess. Wow. So that's on Not to Be, and unfortunately it's 100% true. It's not a Babylon Bee story. Senate committee sneaks provision into the NDAA allowing women to be drafted, which I mentioned earlier. So this is more info on that from the same site. And then Rep. Anna Paulina Luna, I heard Biden will likely be replaced as Democrat nominee. So, yeah, we'll see. We've talked about that at length on this show often. We'll see what happens. She is saying that he likely will be. I would think so, if they even get that far. Nashville journalist faces jail time over trans shooter manifesto leak. Mentioned this one earlier as well. So we'll link to all these in the Substack post that I do, but you can find them if you're interested on Infowars.com is where those are. Modernity News. Biden campaign claims Trump said he will throw women with beautiful children in mass detention camps. This is the Propaganda and Gaslighting Administration. The Biden campaign claims Trump said he will throw women with beautiful children in mass detention camps. More straight up lies. Because he did that the first time he was president. I think that they seem to forget that we all remember that that Trump was actually President Trump once already. I think that we are supposed to forget that and just assume that he's never been president before and that this is all happening for the first time. I think that's what they actually think that we should believe. So, I don't know. I don't remember things being so terrible when he was in versus Biden. Who is watching this? Star Wars lesbian witches use the Force to get pregnant without men. Put a chick in it and make her lame and gay, because that's what Disney does. So they're using the Force to get pregnant without men. This is Disney Star Wars. Why would you watch this? But I wanted to bring attention to it because it's so stupid. So ridiculous. And if you have kids or grandkids watching Star Wars, maybe steer them away from it. VaccineImpact.com exposing Christian Zionism, false teaching. God saves individuals, not groups of people. So this is a good one. American Christian Zionism may be the most dangerous and the most satanic teaching in the history of Christianity, since the Zionist false doctrine is claimed to be taught in the Bible. I have used the Bible to prove that it is not. And in fact, the Bible teaches the exact opposite. So anyone can fact-check my articles by going directly to the original source, the Bible. One very clear and easy way to refute Zionism from the Bible is to look at the very clear and obvious truths that are taught in the Bible that almost all Christians agree on, and that totally contradict Christian Zionism. Christian Zionism differs from Jewish Zionism, but they both share the belief that the Jews, quote-unquote, are God's chosen people, and that this ethnic group of people has a special significance before God based on their membership in this ethnic group today. And while Christian Zionists can make this claim based on the writings of the Old Testament under the Mosaic covenant, they cannot make this claim based on the New Covenant in the New Testament that followed the historical execution and subsequent raising from the dead of Jesus Christ, the Jewish Messiah. The Apostle Paul in the New Testament, himself a Jewish leader who converted from Zionism, referred to as the circumcision party at that time. So we can start calling the Zionists the circumcision party and see how they like it. Wrote, therefore, remember that formerly you, who are Gentiles by birth and called uncircumcised by those who call themselves the uncircumcision, that done in the body by the hands of men, remember that at that time you were separate from Christ, excluded from citizenship in Israel and foreigners to the covenants of the promise, without hope and without God in the world. But now in Christ Jesus, you who were once far away have been brought near through the blood of Christ. For he himself is our peace, who has made the two one and has destroyed the barrier, the dividing wall of hostility, by abolishing in his flesh the law with its commandments and regulations. His purpose was to create in himself one new man out of the two, thus making peace, and in this one body to reconcile both of them to God through the cross, by which he put to death their hostility. Ephesians 2:11 through 16. So the first thing to notice here is that the new covenant in the New Covenant, it does not matter which group one belongs to, either Jews or non-Jews referred to as Gentiles. What matters is as if one is part of this new man, also described as one body, that was made possible by the blood of Christ. Any other group affiliation is meaningless. So I read all that because I think it's important to kind of make sure it's out there, and maybe check out this full article. That's not even all of it. But there's much to be learned here about the Christian Zionism false teaching. And I think that's a huge one that we all really need to have a better grasp of. So the next article on vaccineimpact.com, Saudi Arabia ends 80-year petrodollar U.S. agreement, joins China-led central bank digital currency coalition. So that's something that we will undoubtedly be hearing more about. As the world looks on with horror on the Palestinian massacre, prompting calls for ceasefire, Christian pastors continue to urge genocide, based on what I just read a second ago about Christian Zionism. Freemason Christian pastor John MacArthur. So these people are totally fine with the genocide. They just look past it because they think that the Jews are God's chosen people. But see, that's propaganda, my friends. They're not. But anyway, yes, they are believing that they are, so therefore it's okay if Israel does whatever they want. So they say. GeoWatch for this week, we have flash flooding Florida. South Florida compared to scenes from a zombie movie as widespread flooding triggers rare warning from CBS News. Unstable systems, why geoengineering will solve neither climate change nor climate geopolitics. From European Leadership Network, the ELN report continues with this. Even more so than resource competition, this could trigger interstate conflict up to war, which, under the circumstances of great power competition and climate change, would be a threat to humanity's very survival. Where does that leave us? Latest installment of Global Alert News is below, and this week we didn't do any edits or changes, so what you see here on the embedded YouTube video is the same one that went out over the radio, same one that went out over BitChute, Rumble, Spotify. So yeah, it's a good show this week as always, and make sure you check that out, geoengineeringwatch.org. Feel free to jump on the email newsletter list too if you're so inclined. And then here is the wow, it's going to be a hot one. Here's the weather coming up, the scheduled weather next 10 days, June 22 to 26. It's going to be above normal everywhere, but there is no normal anymore. So red map. And then I found this one too and thought it was kind of interesting. Israel 365 News. I knew when they mentioned Jesus, there was probably something like an ulterior motive behind it, but it is actually an interesting article, and I thought I'd mention it just because I doubt that you've heard about this. Newly deciphered manuscript identified as earliest account of Jesus' childhood. And I saw this and thought, okay, is that all there is to it? Because how many words could that possibly be? And what could it possibly say? But here's kind of the bottom line. It says a 1600-year-old manuscript sat in a library overlooked and neglected for decades, but has recently been deciphered and discovered to be the earliest known account of Jesus' childhood. Researchers believe the papyrus manuscript fragment was made in Egypt in the 4th or 5th century when the country was a Christian society. The clumsy handwriting with irregular lines indicates it was a writing exercise in a school or a monastery. The fragment, which measures around 11 by 5 centimeters, so not real big, contains a total of 13 lines in Greek letters. Again, here it is. Around 10 letters per line, copied from the apocryphal Gospel of Thomas that tells episodes of the childhood of Jesus. Until now, a codex from the 11th century was the oldest known Greek version of the Gospel of Thomas, probably written in the 2nd century. The apocryphal text was not officially included in the New Testament, as some early Christian writers doubted its accuracy. Papyrologists, how about that, from the Institute for Christianity and Antiquity at Humboldt University, identified the true nature of the papyrus. It was thought to be part of an everyday document, such as a private letter or a shopping list, because the handwriting seems so clumsy. We first noticed the word Jesus in the text. Interesting that that little piece has Jesus' name on it somewhere. I don't know where. And then, by comparing it with numerous other digitized papyri, we deciphered it letter by letter and quickly realized that it could not be an everyday document. Using other key terms such as crowing or branch, which the papyrologists searched in other early Christian texts, they recognized that it was a copy of the infancy gospel according to Thomas. The few words in the fragment show that the text describes the beginning of the vivification of the sparrows. An episode, I'd not heard of this, an episode from Jesus' childhood that is considered the second miracle in the apocryphal Gospel of Thomas. So here's the story, and this is wild. According to the account, Jesus plays at the ford of a rushing stream and molds 12 sparrows from the soft clay he finds in the mud. When his father, Joseph, rebukes him and asks why he's doing such things on the holy Sabbath, the 5-year-old Jesus claps his hands and brings the clay figures to life. Wow. Had you ever heard that story? I don't think I had. I don't know that I've ever read the Gospel of Thomas, or I probably would have remembered that. From the comparison with already known manuscripts of this Gospel, we know that our text is the earliest. It follows the original text, which, according to the current state of research, was written in the 2nd century. So this is quite old. The fragment is of extraordinary interest for research. On the one hand, because we were able to date it to the 4th or 5th century, making the earliest known copy. On the other hand, because we were able to gain new insights into the transmission of the text. So that is pretty wild. He claps his hands and brings the clay figures to life. How about that? Yes. So that's on Israel 365 News, believe it or not. And I think that was my last article for tonight. Let's see. Yep. That was it. So, all right. That was it for me tonight. We are running late yet again. We're approaching 3 hours again. I don't seem to be able to do this show in less than that. So anyways, my apologies for keeping you guys here so late, but I guess we had fun. Lots to talk about, huh? Lots of interesting stuff going on in the world out there, and if you don't mind, sign up on my Substack, totally free. Don't do any advertising on this show. I've been going for 2.5, 3 hours, whatever it was, and there have been 0 commercials. I'm not selling you gold and silver. I'm not selling you water purification programs and systems. I'm not selling you, what else is there? You name it. Food storage systems and all that kind of stuff. Oils and ointments and none of that. We don't do that stuff here. So I'm glad you guys joined me tonight. Certainly appreciate it. If you don't mind signing up on the free Substack, it's right there, diamonddisc.substack.com. You click on it and drop your email address in there, and then here is what it looks like. I haven't mentioned this in a while. The different social media platforms I'm on are all listed here on the homepage. From Spotify and Apple Podcasts down through Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, but I'm not really using that anymore because they've pretty much banned me from there. Rumble, BitChute, Brighteon, ClickView, which ClickView is not really working anymore either for me for some reason. And others. Getter is mentioned, MeWe, CloutHub, some of the other really good alt media type, social media, I should say, platforms. So Yes, let me see what you guys are saying. Please subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Let's get Doug to break 1,000. Thank you. Yeah, I'm hovering right around the 900 and something range, whatever it was. What did I say? I saw it earlier today. And I guess I don't have it pulled up. Well, this is the BitChute channel if you want to go there and subscribe. Rumble as well, and then Brighteon. People seem to love and hate the last week's show for some reason. I got some feedback about my my show title last week. Confirmed, the Ark of the Covenant's been found. I got some feedback from some people just lambasting me, saying that I was forcing them to click. It was clickbait because I put that in there as a title and then didn't talk about it. Well, all I had to do was go an hour into the program, and I talked about it for like 15 minutes. So they didn't see what I was actually, because you talk for 3 hours, you got to call the show something. I can't just say the date and the name of the show and then have anybody watch. I have to give it some sort of a name and reason for people to click on it. And so people were accusing me of clickbait. And so my point there was, how am I forcing you to click on it? And what happens when you do click on it? There's no advertising on any of my videos. It's not like anything's monetized where you click it and then go watch and it pays me somehow. That doesn't happen. So I'm not trying to trick anybody. 919, okay. I'm not trying to trick anybody into watching my videos. I'm trying to give an interesting title so that hopefully people will watch it. But, the Ark of the Covenant information was in the video last week. I talked about it at length and talked about Ron Wyatt's work at length in the video. So if people missed it, they just didn't bother to look. So I thought that was interesting, hearing from the whining people who are calling it clickbait. Thought that was kind of funny. People are weird and impatient. Yes, for sure. Don't absorb their negativity. You're awesome. We know it. Thank you, Emily. Appreciate that. Yeah, so we're at 919. So yeah, let's try and get to 1,000. I might be... we might have to do a party if we ever make it to 1,000. Of course, if we get to 1,000, then there's a good chance that the very next day I'll be back to 999 or 990 or whatever. That's the way YouTube seems to roll, at least as far as my channel goes. I get a few and then they subtract a few. I get a few more and then they subtract a few more. So that's kind of the way it works around here with my being on YouTube, but at least I'm being allowed to do the live streams at this point. So I think that's good. I agree, Doug. We don't have a hero on a white horse coming, especially not Trump. Lol. Well, the hero on the white horse is Jesus himself. I think he will probably be riding a white horse. That's what Revelation talks about. And I don't think that's all that far off. So we've talked about that quite a bit around here. Okay, so one programming note, just so I don't forget about it. I'll be traveling the next week or so, and hopefully it won't affect my ability to do the show. If it does, I will let you guys know on the Substack post. So once again, good reason to be on the Substack list, because that's how I let people know, either that or in the band group. And so if you're in the band group, I would put the notice in there if something changes, like the time or the day or any of that stuff. I'm still planning to do the actual broadcast, so we'll plan to do that. Well, anyway, if you don't mind, follow me on these different platforms. I'm on Brighteon, I'm on BitChute, and YouTube, obviously, and Rumble. So follow me there if you're not already. And then I didn't mention Twitter X, but I'm also on there. So that seems to be growing. Finding some people who are liking what I'm tweeting and reposting for on and off through the week. It's the Diamond RPRT. So the Diamond Report on Twitter. The Diamond RPRT report is abbreviated. Anyways, I guess that's it for me tonight and for this week. So we will be back next week at some point. So stay tuned to the band group and to the Substack. I'll let you guys know if it's a different day and time for some weird reason. But being on the road, it's a little harder to do and carve out the time and all that stuff. So just know that I will be doing a broadcast at some point, so just be on the list and you'll have that info as soon as I have it. So I hope you guys have a blessed week and first week of summer, I guess. So stay cool, and I hope you guys remember and keep Jesus close to you. Keep your loved ones close to you. We just don't know how much time we have before something bad happens, because unfortunately it looks like from all intents and purposes, the American empire is going to do something in the coming months leading up to the election, whether it's World War III or whatever. I don't know, but something big is going to happen. Pretty much a guarantee at this point, because they have to either stop the election or certainly stop Trump, and they're totally fine destroying everything in their path. And unfortunately, that means you and me and all of our families. So anyway, keep praying for our country. Keep praying for all of us. And I know you guys will, and I will keep praying for you guys as well. So blessings to you all. Have a really good one, and I'll talk to you again very soon.